Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Core Studio. Welcome to the show. So we just have a few days left of Kaldheim spoilers, but the hits just keep coming. And we finally finished out the incredible uncommon cycle of commanders from each guild. So if you haven't seen yesterday's episode on the new Anthem Landfall Token Commander, make sure you check that out. But as always, with that episode and with this one, a quick spoiler warning. If you're not looking to see spoilers, make sure you don't keep watching because you're gonna see a spoiler. Maybe instead go watch my deck tech on Send Triplets, the very friendly commander that everyone loves to share their hands with. But with all that said, let's jump into it. So the Kaldheim spoiler that I'm going to be talking about in this episode is Svella Ice Shaper. And like I mentioned earlier, this seems to be the last of all the uncommon commanders in that guild cycle. And like many of the others, this one does not disappoint. Svella is a 2/4 troll warrior that costs 1 red-green. By paying 3 and tapping it, you create a colorless snow artifact token named Icy Manolith with tap, add 1 mana of any color. And by paying 6 red-green, you tap it and look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may cast a spell from among them without paying its mana cost, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this troll can do a lot for you. This Gruul commander can help you ramp in a very unique way. Typically, if you've got a commander that's in green and ramps you, it's usually going to be with lands or it's a mana dork of some type. But this commander just likes making mana rocks, and that's still incredibly effective. Again, you are paying 3 mana to do this, but you basically get 1 mana back from it. There are of course ways to make this even more efficient or to get more than 1 mana rock in a turn, but we'll talk about those in a bit. Let's get through that second ability though. Basically, you pay 8 mana and then you tap it and look at the top 4 cards of your library and cast one of those spells for free. So this is kind of like a mini Golos effect. You're digging 1 card deeper than Golos, but you only get to cast one of those things. Still, there are plenty of ways to use and abuse this and to make the most out of this ability. Let's start things off though by talking about some ways to make this commander even more impactful. If we can untap Svella, we can utilize its abilities more than once in a turn. And again, with that first ability, that's going to be key in flooding the board with mana rocks. So the first card that came to mind for me was Seedborn Muse. Now, Seedborn Muse is technically not a budget card yet, though it used to be a $20 plus card, now it's around $5. So you might be able to squeeze it into your budget, or with some more reprints, perhaps it can get down to budget levels. Regardless, Seedborn Muse is a 2/4 spirit that says untap all permanents you control during each other player's untap step. So yeah, this pairs incredibly well with Svella, especially early on. Essentially, this can guarantee you the ability to make 4 mana rocks in 1 trip around the table. And of course, you can also utilize any additional mana on instants or any other effects. Now, a somewhat more budget-friendly option that can help you out in a different way is something like Magerite Stone. By paying 1 and tapping it, we can untap target creature that has an activated ability with tap in its cost. So we can untap our commander and utilize it a second time. Now in these colors, there are a decent amount of these effects, including some other repeatable ones like Seeker of Skybreak. By tapping it, we can just untap our commander. So again, being able to produce multiple mana rocks on each trip around the table is huge for this kind of a deck. We're not only building up our mana to cast other things, but we're also going to be building it up to activate that other ability. Another consideration might be a creature with an ETB like Great Oak Guardian. When it enters the battlefield, creatures target player controls get +2/+2 until end of turn, untap them. So if we activate our commander's other ability, we hit this off the top, and then we untap all of our creatures. Again, this deck is going to be fantastic at generating an absurd amount of mana. So untapping our creatures and being able to activate our commander again is a fantastic effect. But now let's talk about some ways to make our commander even more efficient. By getting the most out of our commander's abilities, especially that first one, we can get really ahead of our opponents. So the first card that came to mind for me was Heartstone. Heartstone is somewhat of an older card, so I'm going to read its Oracle text. Activated abilities of creatures cost 1 less to activate. This effect can't reduce the mana and the cost to less than 1 mana. So this may help our opponents out as well, but it's going to be well worth it for this deck. This reduces the cost of both of our commander's abilities, and obviously the more impactful one is going from 3 mana down to 2 for that first one. Essentially paying 2 for a mana rock is a lot more efficient than paying 3. And again, keep in mind that that mana rock it creates comes into play untapped. So we essentially are getting 1 mana back, and it's only really costing us 1 mana to activate. Another type of card that can really help us out is something like Frontier Siege. When it comes into play, we're going to choose Cons, and at the beginning of each of our main phases, we add green to our mana pool. So this card helps give us consistent mana production. We can just keep dumping this mana into our commander over and over again throughout the game. So we utilize 2 of this mana and then 1 of our own and activate our commander, and we get basically 1 mana back from our commander, creating a mana rock. So in a way, it kind of helps us activate our commander for free. Now, obviously, we can utilize that mana for other things, including our commander's second ability. And if we've got ways to untap our commander, it's kind of like a discount multiple times in a turn. But a card that can be incredibly impactful in this deck is Second Harvest. It says for each token you control, create a token that's a copy of that permanent. Now, most of the time, this card is used in creature token decks, but it's incredibly impactful in this deck because it can just double up our mana rocks. If we've got 4 more mana rocks on the field, this effectively pays for itself. And since it's at instant speed, this can come out of absolutely nowhere. We cast this right before our turn to double up our mana rocks, and then we can have a huge next turn and really take over the game. But just one more card that I do want to bring up that is slightly out of budget consideration is Illusionist Bracers. At this point, it's around $7 or $8, but for this deck, it can be very impactful if you can squeeze it in your budget. It says whenever an ability of equipped creature is activated, if it isn't a mana ability, copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. So this can double up each of our commander's abilities, making each activation doubly as effective. And speaking of doubling up, again, another out of budget consideration, but one that you might want to consider is Mana Reflection. With its recent reprint, it's around $9 or $10, and it says if you tap a permanent for mana, it produces twice as much of that mana instead. So basically now all of our lands and mana rocks and anything else taps for 2. But now let's dig further into our commander's second ability, which is getting things off the top. Now with this ability, you can really build around it in a couple of different ways. One might be to utilize some cards that can actively set the top of your library like Brutalizer Exarch, because when it comes into play, you can choose to tutor for a creature card, reveal it, and put it right on top of your library. So you might set something like an Eldrazi on top like Artisan of Kozilek. It's a 10/9 with Annihilator 2, and it says when you cast this spell, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And keep in mind that your commander's second ability does actually cast the spell, so you are getting any cast triggers. But again, there are plenty of different directions that you can take this ability, and this is just one of them. For perhaps a higher budget deck, I can see many players taking this in Eldrazi direction by throwing in other things like Kozilek Butcher of Truth. Again, because with your commander's activation, you are getting the cast trigger, you are getting a lot more value. Another direction that you might take this commander might be a little more mean. Since your commander focuses on making a ton of mana rocks, you're going to be safe when it comes to mana. Even if someone were to say, oh, I don't know, blow up all the lands. Again, if you've got 10 or so mana rocks in play, you're set, but your opponents might not be. Now, mass land destruction is something that is quite taboo in Commander, so if you're planning on playing it this direction, make sure you talk to your playgroup first. But now as this episode is coming to a close, it's time for me to talk about my gut feeling on this card. Like pretty much all the other uncommon guild commanders, I really like the design of this one. A ramp commander in Gruul that isn't a mana dork and doesn't focus on lands, but rather mana rocks is really cool. And again, Svella gives you a place to dump all that mana and get something really cool off the top. This commander can be taken in a lot of different directions, and I'm excited to see where players take it. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.